All right, everyone. So today's lesson, I will say right off the bat, is admittedly a fairly difficult one, which is why I'm giving you 2 days, one day independently and one day in class. Um, I want to put it in context, obviously, and say that this particular chapter we are focusing on social hierarchies and social systems in classical era empires. And to do that today, we're going to start kind of moving in the direction of looking at and analyzing primary sources. This is an enormous part of AP World History. And obviously, the earlier in history, typically the harder the document. But, a massive part of the end of the year AP exam is the ability to decode and utilize primary sources. And so we have to begin sometime. This seems like as good a time as any. And so today we're going to be looking at some primary sources from a woman, a Chinese woman by the name of Ban Zhao. She was a Confucian historian, and I will just, say right off the bat that the words that you're going to read today need to be carefully analyzed and kind of assessed for point of view. Meaning, what do you think she was really trying to accomplish in these? Because I will freely admit, to a large extent, she's actually kind of a badass, right? And a lot of her words are going to cause you, upon initial read, to go, wait a second, this is awful. Um, but we need to kind of look at what was she trying to accomplish by saying things that way. And so that's my hint to you. As you read her sources, you need to read her words critically, right? Not everything is as it appears. But in order to make today's lesson more valuable, I want to talk a little bit about her so that you understand the words you're reading. So, first question, who was she? Who was Ban Zhao? And so the first thing, I'll give some history here, some stuff that's relatively unimportant, but she was born into a prominent government family. Now, as we have already talked about, being in the bureaucracy, the government in Chinese classical society would have placed you at the very top of the social pyramid. So she was born in a very important family and she was informally educated. Now, I want to make that distinction because formal education would have only been available to sons, but she was informally educated in very traditional ways. As was common in Chinese society at the time, she was married at the age of 14, and lucky for her, given her eventual historical significance, she was also widowed at an early age. It was very common for girls to wed much older men, and so widowing was also a fairly common phenomenon. So she was widowed at an early age, and all of this, like I said, is pretty boring. It's not very consequential. None of this you're really going to need to know. It does give a little bit of insight into her words, but what she went on to become is far more interesting. Um, at the time of her writing these particular documents, she was in the entire Han dynasty, the entire Han Chinese Empire, the leading female Confucian scholar and one of the leading Confucian scholars in general. She eventually used this position as a well respected and leading Confucian scholar to actually become the official imperial Han historian for the emperor himself. Now, if you remember, Confucianism greatly values history, right? And celebration of the past, and nostalgizing of kind of like these good old days. And so this being the official imperial historian to the emperor himself would have given her a significant amount of social standing even as a woman. She was the first female to hold this particular position, and she eventually catapulted this position to be an advisor to Empress Deng herself. And so all of this is, minor facts are mildly interesting, except when you view them through the unit that we're studying, which is social systems of classical empires. And in this slide, you see that there was an empress in China, that there was an imperial Han historian who was female, things that would have been very odd and very exceptional at the time. And so notable and cool, and God knows we need more, cool women in early agricultural societies that were notoriously patriarchal. And so continuing with this next question here, and only 2 points before you'll begin today's lesson and carry it into Thursday. So, what was her significance? We know she was the first. We know she carried some significant government positions as a woman. But the significance of Ban Zhao was that her writings actually became part of the education for Chinese daughters for over 1,500 years. Meaning her arguments, what she was calling for, her words themselves would have lasted for 1,500 years. I want you to put that in perspective. America itself is only 260 years old. So you're talking 7 times as long as America has ever even existed, for this woman's words to be used in Chinese society. They became part of the education of Chinese daughters, and she was one of the earliest to call for the education of girls. And I really want to fixate on this last point because, if we were in person, I would pause the groups and I'd draw people attention to the front and I would ask a leading question like, do you think she really meant this? Um, and the answer would be no, obviously. But I want you to read her words, knowing that I'll give you an answer, she was a feminist. She was packaging her words in a way that she thought that they would best be heard, the way that they would be most persuasive. And she wanted Chinese girls to be educated. So she crafted a really strategic argument for why that was necessary. So all of this is the lead into today's assignment. As I said, I'm going to be pairing groups on Thursday based on did you do up to um, group three, right? And so if you have, you'll be with other people that have done that far and you'll be able to help each other and finish the assignment and be done really easily and it won't be that big of a deal. If you didn't, you're going to be with other people who didn't do it and your Thursday is going to be much more difficult and you will have significantly more work Thursday evening in order to make the due date by Thursday night. So strongly recommend you get a good start to today and I will see you in live class on Thursday.